Hey, Grim Chronicles fans, gather around, because we're about to step into a story that's as dark as it gets. Picture a summer day in 1462, the Romanian plains shimmering under a brutal sun. You're standing on a hill, and the air hits you first, thick, rancid, like the world's holding its breath. Then you see it, a forest but not of trees. The stakes, thousands of them, each crowned with a rotting corpse, their decomposing flesh creating a stench so heavy it makes your stomach churn. Flies swarm in clouds that darken the sky, and the ground beneath your feet is slick with something you don't want to name. This is Târgoviște, and this is the work of Vlad the Impaler, a man whose name still sends shivers through time. Welcome to Grim Chronicles, where we don't just tell stories, we pull you into them. You're not just watching history. You're standing in its shadow, feeling its weight, hearing its screams. Today, we're starting a 10-part journey into the life of Vlad Dracula, a man who wasn't born a monster but was forged into one by a world that taught him cruelty as its first lesson. This is part 1, and trust me, you're not ready for what's coming. By the end, you'll see Vlad not as a tyrant or a legend, but as a boy who survived horrors most of us couldn't imagine, and turned that pain into a legacy of terror. It's 1462, and Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, rides toward Târgoviște with his Ottoman army. This guy's no ordinary commander. He's the one who brought the Byzantine Empire to its knees, a warrior who's waded through blood and fire without blinking. But when he crests the hill and sees Vlad's creation, his horse stops dead. His generals, men who've seen slaughter up close, are gagging behind their face cloths. Before them stretches a grotesque masterpiece. 20,000 bodies, impaled on stakes, arranged in perfect concentric circles. Each stake is measured to the inch, each corpse positioned at the exact same height, like some twisted architect's blueprint brought to life. The precision makes it worse than chaos. This isn't madness, it's method. These aren't random victims. They're Ottoman soldiers, Turkish prisoners, men who fought under Mehmed's own banner. Now they're a message, a warning, a declaration. In the center, where the stakes rise highest, certain bodies spell out words in Arabic, personal insults, secrets only someone who lived in the Ottoman court would know. Mehmed's hands tremble on the reins as he realizes who's behind this. He knows Vlad. He knows the boy Vlad used to be, and he understands, with a sickening clarity, why this forest of death exists. So how does a man become this? How does a Christian prince, educated in the glittering halls of an Ottoman palace, transform into a figure whose name is synonymous with cruelty? To answer that, we need to go back to 1442, to an 11-year-old boy walking down a marble corridor, his heart pounding as Ottoman guards lead him to a room he's learned to dread. This is where Vlad's story begins, not with stakes or battles, but with a child who learned that survival meant becoming something worse than his tormentors could ever imagine. This is 1442, and Vlad, son of Vlad Dracula, has been in the Sultan's palace in Constantinople for 3 months. He's a hostage, along with his younger brother Radu, sent to ensure their father's loyalty to the Ottoman Empire. On the surface, they're treated like royalty, silk clothes, golden plates, lessons in Turkish and Islamic theology. They're told they're honored guests, future allies being groomed for greatness. But when the sun sets, the palace becomes a different place. The guards' footsteps echo, and Vlad knows where they're taking him. He presses himself against the wall, trying to disappear, but the guard's hand lands heavy on his shoulder. He doesn't fight anymore. He tried that in the first week, clawing, kicking, running until they held him down. Now he walks, his child's mind learning that cooperation means less pain. The Ottoman court had a system for boys like Vlad and Radu, non-Muslim children taken from noble families. Officially, they were trained in administration and military arts, molded into loyal servants of the empire. Unofficially, the prettier ones served other purposes. Vlad and Radu, with their pale skin and noble features, were considered prizes. The worst part wasn't the physical abuse, bodies heal or try to. The worst part was the psychological torment. Every night, Vlad was told this was an honor, that he was chosen, that his suffering was a gift to the empire. The doublespeak twisted his young mind. Love was pain, protection was violation. Safety existed only in submission. Turkish music played softly, masking other sounds, and Vlad learned to hate that music. Years later, as voivode of Wallachia, he'd ban all music from his court. His nobles thought it was piety. They didn't know it was the soundtrack of his nightmares. Vlad survived by retreating into his mind. While his body endured, his consciousness floated above, watching the boy below like a stranger. He studied the mechanics of power, the architecture of control, the precise ways a human could be broken. His tutors thought they were creating a puppet prince, compliant and tame. They had no idea they were forging a weapon. For 6 years, Vlad and Radu lived this dual existence. Days of bearable lessons, nights of unspeakable horror. Radu, younger and softer, found a different way to survive. At 9, he laughed with his captors, his musical voice earning him the nickname Radu the Handsome. He adapted by embracing the system, eventually converting to Islam and becoming a favorite of the Sultan's son, Mehmed. Vlad, though, memorized every moment, every violation, not to forget but to perfect. Forgetting would have been mercy. By his 6th year, Vlad was taller, stronger, his voice cracking with adolescence. He was becoming less interesting to his handlers, more dangerous. That's when they decided to break him physically, using a method that would become his signature. A wooden pole, carefully shaped, surgically precise. Every night the footsteps came, until one night they didn't. They passed his door and went to Radu's instead. That was the moment Vlad Dracula was born, not from the abuse but from the abandonment. The realization that in the Ottoman system, you were either the one with power or you were nothing. He swore that night, pressing his fists against the cold marble until they bled, that he would never be powerless again. The brothers' paths diverged completely. Radu, with his delicate features and willingness to please, was groomed differently. While Vlad was broken through force, Radu was cultivated through affection. Mehmed, the future sultan, took a special interest in Radu, writing him poetry, promising him power. It was a different kind of violation, one that corrupted the idea of care. By their 3rd year, the brothers passed in corridors without speaking. Vlad saw Radu's silk clothes and jeweled daggers as betrayal. Radu saw Vlad's scars and burning eyes as pointless defiance. Neither understood they were both victims, just of different methods. When their father was murdered in 1447, the split became a chasm. Vlad, now 16, took it as proof that trust was weakness. He began planning his escape, his revenge, a kingdom built on fear. Radu, 13 and deep in trauma bonds, clung to Mehmed, converting to Islam and taking the name Radu Bey. To Vlad, Radu's adaptation was treason, not just against their family but against his own suffering. If Radu could choose happiness in captivity, what did that say about Vlad's resistance? Fast forward to 1456, and Vlad is voivode of Wallachia, a land caught between empires. He's no longer the boy in the palace. He's a man with a mission, and that mission is control. He summons the best woodworkers in the kingdom, not for fortifications but for stakes. He designs them with the precision of an architect, testing the wood grain, calculating angles, rejecting anything too sharp. A sharp stake kills too quickly. Vlad's stakes are dull, designed to push organs aside, letting gravity do the work over days of agony. He learned this from experience, not as the impaler, but as the impaled. The workshop becomes a torture laboratory. Criminals are brought in for testing, and Vlad oversees each impalement like a scientist, making notes. Too fast, too steep, adjust the taper. His craftsmen notice his breathing change during these sessions, shallow and rapid. His eyes glazing as if he's somewhere else. Sometimes he whispers in Turkish, words like yeter, meaning enough, that make his hands shake. The stakes are soaked in oil, not for preservation but for smoothness, recreating sensations burned into his memory. Thin stakes for women and children, thick ones for warriors, medium ones for merchants, each designed for a specific kind of suffering. Vlad's cruelty isn't random. It's a language, a story told through pain. Every stake is a declaration. I am no longer the one being entered. I am the one who enters. Every scream is an echo of his own, but with the roles reversed. When the first Ottoman prisoner sees his stake and whispers, Kazikli, Turkish for impaler, Vlad smiles. The prisoner recognizes the technique from the palace, from punishments reserved for the most resistant slaves. Vlad leans close and whispers back in perfect Turkish, I learned from the best. And with that, the forest of stakes begins to grow, each one a monument to a memory he can't escape. This is just the beginning, my friends. Vlad's story isn't just about blood and stakes. It's about a boy who learned that power is the only shield against pain, and who spent his life building that shield with the bodies of his enemies. We're heading deeper into his reign, where his methods get darker, his obsessions sharper, and his trauma bleeds into every corner of Wallachia. Stick with us for part 2, where we'll see how Vlad turns his kingdom into a machine of terror, with every stake a sentence in his story. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and let's keep going on this grim journey together. You're back with Grim Chronicles, and I'm glad you're here, because we're about to dive deeper into the world of Vlad the Impaler, where every shadow hides a stake and every whisper carries a warning. We left off with Vlad, forged in the fires of an Ottoman palace, emerging as voivode of Wallachia with a singular goal: control. His childhood taught him that powerlessness is death, and now, in 1456, he's building a kingdom where fear is the law and suffering is the currency. Today, we're walking the blood-soaked streets of Târgoviște, where Vlad's not just ruling. He's rewriting his past with every scream. This is part 2 and it's about to get intense. Let's step into his world. Wallachia in 1456 is a pressure cooker, caught between the Ottoman Empire's expansion and the Hungarian crown's ambitions. It's a land of shifting loyalties, where nobles scheme, merchants bribe, and peasants keep their heads down. Vlad, now in his mid-20s, knows this game better than anyone. 6 years as a hostage in Constantinople didn't just scar him, they gave him a playbook. In the Sultan's palace, he learned that power isn't about armies or wealth alone. It's about fear, precision, and making sure no one forgets who's in charge. And Vlad's about to make Wallachia a lesson carved in flesh. Picture Târgoviște's fortress, a stone behemoth where Vlad holds court. The air is thick with tension, every glance a potential betrayal. Unlike other rulers who delegate punishment, Vlad is hands-on, obsessive, a man who measures his world in angles and inches. His first move as voivode isn't diplomacy or feasts. It's summoning the kingdom's best woodworkers to a workshop that's more laboratory than carpentry shed. They think they're building defenses. They're wrong. The air inside is heavy with sawdust and dread as Vlad paces, inspecting every piece of wood. Not sharp, he says, tossing aside a pointed stake. Too quick. He runs his fingers along the grain, testing its strength, calculating its give. These stakes aren't for killing. They're for suffering, designed to be dull, to push organs aside, letting gravity torture victims over days. The craftsmen exchange uneasy glances, realizing this isn't about fortification. It's about pain, engineered with a mathematician's precision. Vlad's designing a language, each stake a sentence in a story only he understands. He learned this in the Ottoman court, where pain was a message, submission a survival tactic. Back then, he was the canvas for someone else's power. Now he's the artist and Wallachia is his medium. The stakes come in sizes. Thin for women and children, thick for warriors, medium for merchants and priests. Each is soaked in oil, not for preservation but for smoothness, to recreate a sensation burned into his memory. He tests them on criminals, standing over them with a notebook like a scientist. Too fast. He mutters as a man dies in hours instead of days. Adjust the taper. The craftsman noticed something chilling. During these tests, Vlad's breathing shifts, shallow, rapid, like he's somewhere else. His eyes glaze, staring through the victim to a memory only he sees. Sometimes he whispers in Turkish, words like yeter, meaning enough, that make his hands tremble. They don't know he's reliving nights in Constantinople, where the same precision was used on him. They don't know every stake is a mirror, reflecting a boy who swore he'd never be powerless again. Vlad's vision goes beyond the workshop. He's building a bureaucracy of terror, a system where fear isn't a tool, it's the foundation. He creates laws that turn crimes into performances. Steal a loaf of bread? You get a medium stake displayed in the market square. Betray a noble? A thick stake angled to face your home. Adultery? That's a special case, and we'll dive into that next time, because it's darker than you can imagine. The punishments aren't random. They're coded, a message that Vlad sees everything, knows everything, controls everything. Let's talk about one of his most infamous acts, the Easter feast of 1459. It's a Sunday, the holiest day in the Christian calendar, and Vlad decides to celebrate in a way that makes the devil look tame. He sets a dining table in a field outside Târgoviște, silver plates gleaming, crystal goblets catching the light. But the guests aren't nobles or ambassadors. They're the dying, impaled on stakes around the table. Turkish prisoners form the outer ring, corrupt boyars the middle, and closest to Vlad, within spitting distance, are those who've personally wronged him. The ground is a crimson swamp, blood mixing with spring mud, and Vlad's boots squelch as he walks among them, adjusting a stake here, straightening a body there, like a host fixing a crooked napkin. The nobles forced to attend are pale, their hands shaking as they sip wine they can't swallow. Vlad, though, is calm, almost serene, eating slowly, savoring each bite. His eyes move from victim to victim, like he's reading a story he wrote himself. Sometimes he raises his goblet in a mock toast, thanking a writhing merchant for his company. The moans of the impaled create a symphony, and Vlad's appetite grows with every note. This isn't sadism, it's communion. In the Ottoman palace, he witnessed others' pleasure while enduring his own pain. Now he reverses the equation, consuming life while surrounded by death. One man, an Ottoman ambassador, catches Vlad's eye. Most victims lose their voice within hours, throats raw from screaming. But this one, a stubborn diplomat who refused to remove his turban in Vlad's presence, is still speaking. Vlad holds up a hand for silence, and the man's words come in gasps. A prayer in Arabic, one Vlad recognizes from the palace. It's the prayer chanted during the ceremonies that haunted his childhood. Vlad's wine glass shatters in his grip, blood and wine mixing, but he doesn't notice. He's 11 again, hearing those words, feeling hands holding him down. He orders the ambassador removed from the stake, not for mercy, but to prolong his suffering. They clean his wounds, treat him just enough to keep him alive, then re-impale him at a new angle, one that lets him speak. "Sing for me," Vlad says in perfect Turkish. "Sing the songs from the palace." For 3 days, as Vlad hosts feast after feast, the ambassador recreates the soundtrack of Vlad's trauma. Each song drags Vlad back to Constantinople, each note demanding new victims to drown out the memory. He times his meals to their final moments, chewing in rhythm with their death rattles, swallowing as their eyes go blank. It's a dance of suffering, and Vlad's the choreographer. This is Vlad's Wallachia, a kingdom where fear is law, punishment is art, and every stake tells the story of a boy who learned power is the only shield against pain. But this is just the start of his descent. Next time, we'll explore how Vlad's trauma shaped his punishments, especially for women, turning Wallachia into a theater of cruelty that mirrors his deepest scars. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and join us for part 3. You're not ready for what's coming. Welcome back, Grim Chronicles crew, to the blood-stained streets of Târgoviște, where Vlad the Impaler's reign is rewriting history with every scream. Last time, we saw him turn Wallachia into a machine of terror, crafting stakes with surgical precision to reverse the powerlessness of his Ottoman captivity. Today, in part 3, we're diving into the darkest corners of his mind, where his trauma doesn't just fuel his cruelty, it shapes it, especially when it comes to women. This is a story about pain turned into punishment, about a man who saw his own violation in every act of defiance, and about a kingdom trembling under his gaze. Let's walk into the heart of Vlad's court. It's 1459, 3 years into Vlad's second reign, and Wallachia is a land where fear is the air you breathe. The stakes in Târgoviște squares are a constant reminder. Step out of line, and you're next. Vlad's justice is brutal for everyone, but for men, it's clinical impalement, quick or slow, depending on the crime, designed to send a message. For women, especially those accused of sexual sins like adultery or seduction, it's different. It's personal, theatrical, a mirror of Vlad's deepest wounds. His punishments for them aren't just about death. They're about purification, control, and erasing a vulnerability he can never escape. Picture a woman standing before Vlad's throne in Târgoviște's stone-walled court. She's a merchant's wife, accused of betraying her husband with a traveling blacksmith. In another kingdom, she might face banishment or a public whipping. But this is Vlad's court, and his justice has a different arithmetic. "You broke sacred bonds," he says, his voice low, carrying an edge that makes his counselors shift nervously. They've seen this mood before, a stillness that means Vlad's not fully here, that he's judging her through the lens of a boy in a marble corridor. She tries to explain. Her husband's coldness, the blacksmith's kindness, the loneliness of her life. But Vlad's not listening. He's hearing other voices, memories of Ottoman guards talking about sacred bonds and honor through submission. The punishment he orders is specific, horrifying in its precision. The guards bring a stake from a special inventory, reserved for women who've corrupted their vows. This stake is different, heated red-hot before use, shaped with a cruelty that's less about death and more about transformation. The heat will cauterize as it penetrates. Vlad tells his court, his voice almost scholarly. It seals the corruption inside. The woman's screams are meant to teach every wife, every daughter, every woman that their body isn't their own. But really, it's a lesson for a boy who learned his body wasn't his, who was made to feel feminine, passive, a vessel for others' desires. Here's where it gets raw. Vlad's treatment of women reveals the deepest scars of his captivity. In the Ottoman palace, he was feminized, stripped of agency, turned into something he was taught to despise. His masculinity wasn't just challenged, it was dismantled, rebuilt to serve his abusers. Every scream from these women echoes his own, but it's also something more. When a woman suffers for a sexual crime, Vlad's punishing the part of himself that was made weak, made penetrable. Each female victim is a proxy for the boy he was, and the theatrical nature of their punishment proves it. Male criminals get clinical impalements, quick, functional. Women face rituals. Heated stakes, exposed bodies, families forced to watch. Vlad makes fathers and husbands complicit, just as he was made complicit in his own violation. During one trial, Vlad asks questions that have nothing to do with justice. Did you enjoy it? He demands, his eyes boring into the woman. Did you seek it out? Did you corrupt him? Or did he corrupt you? These aren't legal questions, they're personal, rooted in his need to understand agency in violation. As a child, he was told his body's responses meant consent, that he was complicit in his own abuse. Now, he's forcing others to navigate that impossible line, searching for answers he'll never find. The women who defy him suffer the worst. Those who stand tall, refusing to beg, insisting their choices were their own, they get special attention. Vlad supervises their punishments himself, studying their faces, waiting for the moment defiance turns to desperation. It's a progression he knows intimately, one he lived through night after night in Constantinople. He needs to see it reflected, to know he wasn't alone in his fall. One woman, as she's prepared for the stake, looks at him and says, "You're not punishing me for what I did. You're punishing me for what was done to you." The court goes silent. Vlad's face drains of color, then flushes red. For a moment, the mask of the voivode slips, revealing the broken child beneath. "Make it last a week," he orders, his voice shaking. The executioners hesitate, but they obey. This moment haunts Vlad. If a merchant's wife can see through him so clearly, what do his enemies see? What does his brother Radu see? What does Sultan Mehmed see when reports of Wallachia's horrors reach Constantinople? The thought drives him to new extremes, as if enough blood can erase the stain of being known. He stages more elaborate punishments, turning courtrooms into theaters of pain. A woman accused of seducing a priest is impaled with a stake carved with religious symbols, her body displayed in the church square. Another, who poisoned her abusive husband, is forced to drink a concoction made from her own crime before execution. Every punishment is a chapter in Vlad's autobiography, written in screams. Wallachhia's people live in suffocating fear. Peasants avoid the central square, where stakes stand like sentinels. Merchants whisper about the voivode's arithmetic, the formula behind every punishment. Even the boyars, Wallachhia's nobles, tremble, knowing one misstep could land them in Vlad's workshop. Yet his control is absolute. No one dares challenge him, not out of loyalty, but because they've seen what happens to those who do. Vlad's not living as a man. He's a machine, driven to reverse the powerlessness of his youth. Every stake declares, "I am the one who enters." Every scream reminds him he's no longer the boy in the palace. But the memories don't fade. They're in every design, every order, every moment he watches a victim writhe, searching for something he can't name. We're heading deeper into his darkness, my friends, where his trauma births a new kind of horror, one that doesn't just break bodies but transforms them. Next time, we'll explore Vlad's copper cauldron, a device that recreates a nightmare from his Ottoman years with chilling precision. Subscribe, hit the bell, and brace yourself for part 4. You're back with Grim Chronicles, And I'm warning you, this one's going to hit like a gut punch. We've seen Vlad the Impaler turn Wallachia into a kingdom of stakes, each one a twisted echo of his Ottoman captivity. Now, in part 4, we're diving into one of his most chilling creations, the copper cauldron, a torture device that's not just about pain, but about recreating a specific nightmare from his childhood. We're walking through Târgoviște again, where every punishment is a piece of Vlad's past, screaming to be heard. This is a story of cruelty so refined it becomes art, and a man who can't escape the boy he was. Let's dive in. It's 1460, and Vlad's reign is a masterclass in terror. Wallachia's people live with the constant hum of fear, their lives measured by the shadows of stakes in the market square. Vlad's not just ruling, he's rewriting history, turning his trauma into a system of control that no one dares challenge. His workshop, that grim laboratory we saw in part 2, is now a factory of suffering, churning out stakes by the thousands. But Vlad's mind is restless, always searching for new ways to externalize the pain he carries. That's where the copper cauldron comes in, a device so cruel it makes even his hardened executioners pause. Imagine a massive copper vessel, delivered in pieces to Târgoviște's fortress, each part measured to Vlad's exact specifications. The metalworkers from Brasov have followed his orders to the letter, crafting a cauldron large enough to hold 3 men, with a lid pierced by precisely measured holes. Vlad runs his hands along the smooth copper, testing the fit of the lid, adjusting the placement with an architect's eye. The holes must be exact, he tells his craftsman, his voice calm but unyielding. Too large and the steam kills too quickly. Too small, and the neck is crushed before the cooking begins. He demonstrates with his own neck, showing how a man's head should protrude just enough to stay above the waterline, forced to watch his body boil. It took 6 months to perfect this thing. Early versions collapsed under the weight of struggling victims, or the heat killed too fast. Vlad was patient, tweaking the design like in Constantinople, there were marble baths heated just so, where young hostages like Vlad were brought to be cleaned and purified. The water started warm, almost pleasant, lulling you into a false sense of safety. That was the cruelest part, the gentleness that preceded the horror. Vlad's cauldron is his answer, a way to reverse that experience, to make others feel the betrayal he felt. The first test comes with 3 Byzantine merchants caught cheating on taxes. Vlad attends personally, directing servants as they fill the cauldron with water and stoke the fires beneath. The merchants are stripped, their necks fitted through the lid's holes, their heads sticking out like grotesque flowers in a copper garden. The water heats slowly, just as it did in those Ottoman baths. The screaming lasts only a minute. Human throats can't sustain more. What follows are gasps, whimpers, the sound of air bubbling through ruined vocal cords. Vlad leans close, studying their faces, comparing their agony to memories etched in his mind. He's not just watching their pain, he's measuring it, ensuring it matches the blueprint in his head. But the physical torture is only half the design. Vlad adds his own twist, something the Ottomans never taught him. As the water heats, he has items added to the cauldron. The merchants' fraudulent papers, stolen coins, personal effects that tell the story of their crimes. They're literally stewing in their corruption, their sins made tangible. Then comes the second part, the part that makes even medieval chroniclers hesitate to write it down. Vlad orders the merchants' families brought to the courtyard, not to watch, but to participate. Each family member gets a ladle and is forced to stir the cauldron, to have a hand in their loved ones' deaths. It's collective punishment, refined to its sharpest edge. In the Sultan's palace, Vlad tells a visiting diplomat who's turning green, "They made us complicit in our own degradation." Every person who stirs this pot understands that sensation. The cauldron's true horror lies in its psychological precision. It separates mind and body, forcing victims to witness their own destruction while their consciousness remains intact. Vlad learned this in the palace, floating outside himself to survive, watching his own violation like a stranger. Now, he weaponizes that separation, creating a suffering that attacks the soul as much as the flesh. The cauldron becomes his go-to for crimes of betrayal, corrupt priests, unfaithful wives, officials who sold secrets. Always crimes of intimacy, always punishments that force the guilty to marinate in their own treachery. One victim, an Ottoman guard from Vlad's past, changes everything. As he's lowered toward the boiling water, he looks at Vlad and says, "I know you, Kazikli Voivoda. I was there in the marble halls. I held you down." The recognition hits like a blade. This isn't just any prisoner, it's one of them, a face from the nightmares. The cauldron suddenly feels too small, too inadequate. Vlad orders him pulled out, half-cooked, kept alive through careful tending, then subjected to every torture in his arsenal: stakes, fire, blades. Nothing satisfies. The man dies after weeks, but Vlad feels no resolution, only a deeper rage that no amount of blood can quench. This is Vlad's genius for cruelty, turning pain into a statement, a way to say, "I control the narrative now." Every bubble, every scream, every ladle forced into a family member's hand is Vlad rewriting his story, placing himself as the one who decides who burns. But it's never enough. The memories remain, sharp as the stakes he crafts. Wallachia's people live in a constant state of terror, knowing any misstep could land them in the cauldron, their families forced to stir their fate. The kingdom is a canvas, and Vlad's painting with blood, but the picture is never complete. We're heading into even darker territory, my friends. Next time, we'll explore one of Vlad's most soul-shattering punishments, the torture of a mother that corrupted the very idea of maternal love, showing just how far he'd go to erase his own vulnerability. Subscribe, hit the bell, and get ready for part 5. This one's going to leave a mark. Hey, Grim Chronicles crew, you're back, and I'm glad you're braced for what's coming, because part 5 is one of the darkest chapters yet. We've seen Vlad's stakes and cauldrons, each one a twisted reflection of his Ottoman captivity. But today we're stepping into a punishment that doesn't just break bodies, it shatters the deepest human bonds. This is the story of a mother whose protective love became her torment, and how Vlad used it to mirror his own broken childhood. Let's walk into Vlad's rule has turned every act into a potential crime, every glance a risk. His punishments are performances, each one a chapter in the story of a boy who learned trust is weakness. Today, we're focusing on a woman, a minor noble's wife, who made a small mistake in any other realm might have cost her a fine or a night in a cell. She spoke out against Vlad's taxes in the market square, her voice carrying just far enough to reach the wrong ears. It was a spark of defiance, but in Vlad's Wallachia, defiance ignites his deepest rage. Picture her standing before Vlad's throne, clutching her infant son, her eyes defiant but flickering with fear. She's heard the stories, who hasn't? But as a noble, she thinks there's a limit to Vlad's cruelty. She's wrong. "You spoke of hunger," Vlad says, his voice so calm it's worse than a shout. "You claimed my taxes would starve your children. Let us explore the true meaning of hunger." And the court falls silent, knowing that calm Vlad is calculating Vlad, the one who designs suffering like an artist paints a canvas. The guards move to separate her from her child, but Vlad's orders are precise, and they're not what you expect. They take the baby away, but only for a time. The woman is locked in a cell with nothing but water, no food, for 3 days. 3 days of starvation. Her body eating itself while her mind is consumed by the sound of her child crying in another room. Vlad knows hunger from experience. Not just physical, but the kind that makes you betray everything you are. He learned it in the Ottoman palace, where need was a weapon, where survival meant compromising your soul. After 3 days, they bring her son back. She weeps, clutching him, thinking the worst is over. She's wrong again. Vlad's genius for cruelty lies in patience, in letting hope bloom before crushing it. Servants bring in trays of food, rich stews, fragrant with meat and spices, filling the cell with a smell that makes her mouth water. She's so hungry her judgment is gone, her instincts reduced to raw need. She eats, grateful at first, not noticing the texture, the weight, the familiarity of what she's consuming. Then it hits her. The scream that follows isn't human. It's the sound of a soul breaking, realizing she's eaten something no mother should ever touch. This is Vlad's darkest art, making people complicit in their own destruction. In the Ottoman palace, they played similar games, starving hostages until they do anything, accept anything, betray themselves in ways that haunted them forever. Vlad learned that a hungry person could be made to cross any line, and he uses it here to shatter the sacred bond between mother and child. The horror isn't just the act. It's that she's already swallowed, already become part of the violation. It's a mirror of Vlad's own childhood, where his body's responses were twisted into consent, where he was made complicit in his own pain. But Vlad doesn't stop there. He doesn't execute her immediately. Instead, he releases her, letting her live with what she's done. She becomes a walking ghost, a reminder of how far human degradation can go. Wallachia's people already fear the stakes, but this is different. This is psychological warfare, a terror that strikes at the core of what makes us human. The fear isn't just of pain. It's of losing yourself, of becoming something you can't live with. Modern psychology calls this identity destruction, the kind of trauma that strips away your sense of self. This mother didn't just lose her child. She lost her ability to see herself as a protector, as human. Her final words, gasped out before she dies, hit Vlad harder than any blade. "Radu," she says, "your brother Radu knows what you are. He pities you." It's a desperate jab, pulled from court gossip, but it lands like a cannonball. Radu, the beautiful brother who chose to embrace the Ottomans, who found peace in surrender while Vlad burned with rage. His pity is Vlad's deepest fear. Pity means understanding, and understanding means vulnerability. The one thing Vlad has spent his life trying to erase. Her words spark a new wave of terror, each act a desperate attempt to prove he's beyond pity, beyond the boy Radu remembers. This moment changes Wallachia. The stakes were one thing people could brace for physical pain. But this is a new kind of fear, one that makes you question your own humanity. Vlad's court becomes a place where no bond is sacred, where even love can be turned into a weapon. The mother's story spreads, whispered in taverns and markets, a warning that Vlad's arithmetic of power can break anyone, noble or peasant, man or woman. The kingdom is suffocating under his gaze, and yet, there's more to come. Something quieter, but just as chilling. Next time, we'll explore Vlad's golden goblet experiment, a test of terror that reveals his obsession with inviolability, and how a single boy threatens to unravel it all. Subscribe, hit the bell, and get ready for part 6, where the shadows of Vlad's past grow even darker. Hey Grim Chronicles crew, you're back, and we're stepping into a quieter but no less chilling chapter of Vlad the Impaler's story. We've seen his stakes, his cauldrons, his ability to shatter human bonds, But today, in part 6, we're looking at something different, not a torture device, but a test that reveals the fractured core of Vlad's psyche. Picture a golden goblet, left unguarded in Târgovište's central square, gleaming like a temptation no one dares touch. It's a trap, a symbol, a mirror of Vlad's deepest need to prove he's untouchable. This is a story about power, paranoia, and a boy who reminds Vlad of everything he's tried to bury. Let's walk into the heart of Wallachia's fear. It's 1460, and Târgoviște is a city under Vlad's shadow. The stakes in the market square are a constant reminder of his power, their silhouettes looming over every transaction, every whispered conversation. Vlad's rule is absolute, built on a foundation of terror that keeps nobles and peasants alike in line. But Vlad's not content with physical control. He wants to master the intangible, to create a world where his will is so absolute that even temptation bends to it. Enter the golden goblet, a Byzantine treasure inscribed with holy verses, worth more than most villagers will see in a lifetime. It sits by the central fountain, unguarded, catching the morning sun, free for the taking. But no one dares touch it. Look at it, Vlad tells visiting merchants, gesturing to the goblet as it gleams. In Constantinople, this would be gone in minutes. Here it's lasted years. Do you know why? The merchants know. Everyone knows. The goblet is bait, and the price for touching it is a stake. But it's more than that. For Vlad, it's a test, a way to prove he's created something his childhood lacked. An inviolable space, where precious things remain untouched. As a boy, nothing was sacred. Not his body, not his dignity, not his brother's loyalty. The goblet is his proof that he's transcended that helplessness, that fear can make the world obey. Every examines it for fingerprints or scratches. The townspeople pretend not to watch, but they do, knowing his mood for the day depends on that golden surface. One morning, the goblet has moved, just an inch so slight only someone obsessed would notice. Vlad notices. He freezes, knuckles white around the cup, and the square empties as word spreads. The voivode has found something. Someone will die, probably many someones. Bring me everyone who passed through the square last night. He commands, his voice calm but deadly. Calm Vlad is the worst Vlad, the one who designs torture like a sculptor carves marble. The investigation is relentless. Vlad questions hundreds. Merchants, guards, prostitutes, priests. The goblet wasn't touched. A cat brushed against it while chasing mice. A tiny accident of nature. Yet Vlad can't accept this. In his world, every movement has intent, every violation has a violator. He's not looking for a thief. He's looking for proof that his power is absolute, that fear can create the sacred space he never had. Vlad expands the experiment, leaving silver plates, jewelry, weapons around the city, each one meticulously placed, each one checked daily. Târgoviște becomes a museum of untouched treasures, a city where valuables sit in plain sight because the cost of taking them is too high. It's Vlad's paradise, a place where terror makes things sacred. Children learn to avoid the fountain. Merchants make wide circles around it. Even animals seem to sense the danger radiating from that golden glow. The goblet isn't just an object. It's a symbol of Vlad's transformation, trauma turned into power. But the goblet reveals something darker about Vlad's inner world. He needs constant proof that he's untouchable, that he's no longer the boy in the palace. Every day the goblet stays in place is a day he's not that child. But it also means every day requires checking, verifying, proving. His trauma isn't healed. It's just held at bay. A wound that bleeds anew with every test. Then comes the moment that breaks him. Through his obsessive investigation, Vlad learns a young boy, a street orphan, was sleeping near the fountain. The boy is beautiful. His guards report nervously, with features that remind them of Radu. Radu, Vlad whispers, staring at the child. In his fracturing mind, every beautiful boy is Radu. Every innocent a version of himself before the palace. He doesn't kill the boy, that would be too kind. Instead, he chains him to the fountain, making him the goblet's guardian, forced to protect the very thing that drew suspicion to him. It's Vlad's perfect solution, turning a potential violator into a protector, just as he transformed from violated to violator. The boy's presence is a reminder of everything Vlad can't escape. His brother's pity, his own lost innocence, the footsteps that still echo in his dreams. Wallachia is now a place where even a golden cup is a weapon, where fear creates order but never peace. We're not done yet, my friends. Next time, we'll explore Vlad's use of animals in torture, a method drawn from the Ottoman games that haunted him, and how his obsession with pain's threshold pushes him further into madness. Subscribe, hit the bell, and let's keep walking this grim path for part 7. Welcome back, Grim Chronicles fans, to the ever-darkening world of Vlad the Impaler. We've just seen his golden goblet turn Târgoviște into a city of untouchable treasures, a testament to his obsession with control. But in part 7, we're stepping into something even stranger, one of Vlad's most unsettling torture methods, where the tools aren't stakes or cauldrons but something as innocent as goats. Sounds bizarre, right? In Vlad's hands, even farm animals become instruments of horror, each one tied to a specific memory from his Ottoman captivity. This is a story about the thin line between pleasure and pain, and how Vlad chased a moment he could never recreate. Let's descend into his dungeon. It's 1461, and Târgoviște is a city where fear is the heartbeat. The stakes, the cauldrons, the goblet, they've made Vlad's rule absolute, a kingdom where no one dares step out of line. But Vlad's mind is a labyrinth, always finding new ways to externalize the horrors of his childhood. Picture his dungeon, damp and shadowed, where a janissary captain, one of the Sultan's elite soldiers, is bound to a tilted wooden frame, his bare feet elevated. He's been here for days, expecting the usual stakes, fire, blades. But when a peasant boy leads in 3 goats, their bells tinkling softly, the captain laughs, a nervous chuckle born of confusion. "Are we to be farmers now, voivode?" he asks, trying for bravado. Vlad's smile makes his voice crack. Vlad circles the prisoner, his tone almost friendly. "You were trained in the Divserm system, yes? Taken as a boy, like I was." The captain nods, wary. "Then you understand the value of starting gently." Servants wash the captain's feet with warm water, almost tenderly, then coat them with coarse salt. The goats, smelling the salt, move closer, their tongues rasping against his skin. At first, it's almost pleasant, ticklish. The captain laughs again, surprised by the absurdity. Vlad pulls up a chair, settling in like he's watching a play. "Tell me about your training," he says. "The early years, when you were still soft enough to break." By the 3rd hour, the laughter is gone. The goat's relentless licking has worn through the skin, the salt grinding into raw flesh. What started as tickling becomes burning, then agony. The goats, oblivious, keep going, their tongues tasting copper along with salt. Vlad leans forward, studying every twitch, every grimace, fascinated by the moment when sensation overwhelms the nervous system, turning pleasure into pain. It's a threshold he knows well, one he crossed in the Ottoman palace, in rooms with silk cushions and perfumed oils, where gentleness became its own kind of violence. "Shall I tell you a secret?" Vlad asks, pouring wine from a jeweled pitcher. This comes from a specific memory. They called it the Sultan's kittens, soft little tongues in the dark. Except they weren't always from cats. The captain's eyes widen, understanding dawning. This isn't random, it's autobiography, Vlad's trauma written in the captain's flesh. The goats find every tender spot, between the toes, the arch, the heel, turning ticklish places into electric agony. The captain tries to pull away, but the frame holds him still, the goats following every movement with patient precision. When one prisoner whispers, "I know why you watch so closely," Vlad's face darkens. He orders the goats removed. The man's flayed feet wrapped in silk, the same silk from the palace. Then Vlad kneels before him, whispering in Turkish, "You want to know why? Because I'm waiting to see my own face. The moment you become me, and I become them." He orders the feet recoat with salt and honey, the goats brought back with their kids, whose softer tongues prolong the torture. "Laugh," Vlad commands. "Laugh like your life depends on it." And it does. Those who break too quickly or resist too long end up on stakes. But those who perform their suffering just right, who give Vlad the exact progression he needs, sometimes live broken, but alive to spread the word of Wallachia's terror. This method isn't about pain alone. It's about control, about forcing others to relive the moment Vlad's world shattered. Every torture in his arsenal is a chapter from his past, a way to reverse the roles, to make others feel the helplessness he endured. The goats, the salt, the laughter turn to screams. It's all a recreation of the games the Ottomans played with their hostages, games that taught Vlad that power is the only shield against violation. Wallachhia's people know this by now. They've seen the stakes, smelled the cauldrons, avoided the goblet. But the goat torture spreads a new kind of fear, one that makes you question your own resilience. Could you laugh through the pain? Could you perform for the voivode? The answer is no. And everyone knows it. Vlad's court is a place where survival means becoming what he wants, just as he once had to become what the Ottomans wanted. The kingdom is a machine, grinding down anyone who dares to be human. We're building toward the climax, my friends. Next time, we're heading to 1462, where Vlad's war with the Ottomans reaches its peak with the Forest of Stakes at Târgoviște, a masterpiece of horror that stops even Sultan Mehmed II in his tracks. Subscribe, hit the bell, and brace yourself for Part 8. The darkness is about to peak. Hey Grim Chronicles crew, you're back for Part 8, and we're at the turning point of Vlad the Impaler's story, where his trauma and genius collide to create something so horrifying it stops an empire cold. We've seen his stakes, his cauldrons, his goblet, and his goat tortures, each one a twisted reflection of his Ottoman captivity. Now, in 1462, Vlad unleashes his masterpiece. The Forest of Stakes at Târgoviște, 20,000 bodies arranged to break even Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople. This is a story about art, revenge, and a man who turned his pain into a message written in flesh and wood. Let's step onto the Romanian plains and face the horror. It's the summer of 1462, and Wallachia is a battleground. The Ottoman Empire, led by Mehmed II, is pushing north to crush Vlad's defiance and bring Wallachia to heel. Vlad, in his third reign as voivode, knows he's outnumbered. His army is fierce but small, his resources stretched thin. But Vlad doesn't fight like other men. He fights with fear, with precision, with a mind shaped by 6 years in the Ottoman palace. As Mehmed's army approaches Târgoviște, they're met not with soldiers but with a sight that makes hardened warriors gag. A forest of 20,000 stakes, stretching across the plain like a nightmare made real. The smell hits first. A layered stench of fresh blood, sweet rot, and dry dust, an olfactory timeline of suffering. The sound comes next. Moans, gasps, the creak of wood as the still living try to ease their agony. But it's the sight that stops Mem's horse. The bodies aren't scattered. They're arranged, orchestrated in concentric circles, each stake measured to the inch, each corpse at the same height. The outermost ring is common soldiers, desiccated by the sun. Inward, the stakes rise higher, officers, commanders, nobles. At the center, on the tallest stakes, are Ottoman civilians, merchants, tax collectors, diplomats, dressed in court finery. It's not chaos. It's art, a symphony of suffering where every corpse is a note. Mehmed, who's seen cities burn without flinching, feels his stomach turn. The arrangement isn't random. It's familiar. The concentric circles, the rising heights, the precise spacing. It's the layout of the Ottoman court during the ceremonies where hostages like Vlad were displayed. He remembers. Mehmed whispers, his voice tinged with something like fear. He remembers everything. As they ride closer, Mehmed sees the poses. Some bodies outstretched in supplication, others bent backward in submission. Positions he recognizes from his father's court, from the education of boys like Vlad and Radu. Some corpses are preserved with salt and oils, not random victims but specific ones. Nobles, guards, even eunuchs from the harem where Vlad was held. They're people Mehmed knows, faces from his past, now part of Vlad's message. The centerpiece is the worst. A figure on the tallest stake, dressed in Ottoman finery, an effigy of the entire Ottoman system, impaled as the ultimate conquered enemy. It's not just a defeat, it's a reversal. Vlad declaring that the violated has become the violator. The geometric precision speaks of years of planning, trauma transformed into methodology. Mehmed's generals urge him to advance. They have the numbers to take Târgoviște. But Mehmed sits frozen, seeing not just horror but his own sins reflected back. He knew Vlad as a boy, knew what was done to him, participated in the system that created this monster. Now Vlad has sent a message in 20,000 corpses. I remember. I survived. I transformed. This forest isn't just a defense. It's Vlad's autobiography. Every stake a response to a specific violation. Every scream an echo of his own. The Arabic words spelled out among the bodies are personal. Secrets only someone from the palace would know. Insults aimed at Mehmed's heart. Vlad has taken the Ottoman methods, precision, control, fear, and perfected them, creating something even the Sultan can't face. As the sun sets, painting the stakes red, Mehmed orders a retreat. The boy became the stake. He whispers. A capitulation that acknowledges Vlad as both victim and victor, a weapon forged by the Ottomans' own hands. Wallachia holds its breath as the Ottomans withdraw, but Vlad's victory is hollow. He watches from his castle's highest tower, feeling no joy, only the weight of memories that refuse to die. The forest stands for weeks, a rotting monument to trauma transformed, but never transcended. We're almost at the end, my friends, and the weight of Vlad's emptiness is about to drive him deeper into madness. Next time, we'll follow the aftermath of this moment, as Vlad grapples with a revenge that doesn't heal and a past that won't let go. Subscribe, hit the bell, and get ready for Part 9. Welcome back, Grim Chronicles crew, to Part 9, where we're standing in the shadow of Vlad the Impaler's greatest triumph and his deepest despair. The forest of 20,000 stakes at Târgoviște has just forced Sultan Mehmed II to retreat, a victory that should feel like glory but leaves Vlad hollow. Today, we're diving into the aftermath, where his quest for control spirals into madness, and the boy he was claws at the man he's become. This is a story about revenge that doesn't heal, about a kingdom drowning in fear, and about a man who can't escape the palace corridors of his childhood. Let's walk through the ruins of Vlad's victory. It's late 1462, and Târgoviște is quiet, too quiet. The Ottoman army is gone, their retreat a testament to Vlad's power. The forest of stakes still stands, a rotting monument that whispers his name across Europe. Wallachia is his, its people cowed, its nobles obedient, its enemies fleeing. But Vlad, watching from his castle's highest tower, feels nothing. No triumph, no relief, just an emptiness worse than pain. He spent 20 years building to this moment, crafting each stake, each cauldron, each torture as a brushstroke in his masterpiece. Yet the boy inside him, the one who flinched at footsteps, who bled against marble walls, is still there, unhealed, unavenged. This emptiness drives Vlad to new extremes. If 20,000 stakes didn't silence his past, what will? He doubles down, ordering more impalements, more cauldrons, more tests like the golden goblet. The punishments grow more elaborate, as if complexity can fill the void. A noble who questions Vlad's taxes is impaled with a stake carved with his family crest, his body displayed in his own courtyard. A priest caught skimming church funds is boiled in a cauldron filled with melted gold, a mockery of his greed. Every act is a declaration. I am not that boy. But every scream proves he still is. Vlad's paranoia deepens. The woman's words from Part 5. Radu knows what you are. He pities you. Echo in his mind, a wound that won't close. Radu, now an Ottoman general, is out there, successful, beloved, a man who found peace where Vlad found only rage. Pity is worse than hatred. It implies Vlad is still the victim, still the child in the palace. He begins seeing Radu everywhere. In the faces of prisoners, in the beauty of the boy by the goblet, in the whispers of his own court. He orders spies to track Radu's movements, interrogates travelers for news of his brother, as if finding Radu will let him erase the pity in his eyes. The forest of stakes becomes Vlad's obsession. He visits it daily, walking among the rotting bodies, adjusting stakes like a gardener tending plants. He's searching for something, proof that his power is absolute, that he's transcended his past. But the bodies decay, the stakes splinter, and the memories remain. He dreams of the palace again, the footsteps louder now, the music sharper. His tortures grow more personal, as if each one is a conversation with his younger self. A Turkish prisoner who mentions the palace is subjected to a week of alternating stakes and cauldrons. His screams a dialogue Vlad can't finish. Wallachia feels the weight. The people, already broken by fear, now live in a world where every act is a potential crime. A merchant who haggles too loudly is impaled for disrupting order. A woman who looks too long at the goblet is tortured with goats, her laughter turning to screams. Vlad's court is a machine, grinding down anyone who steps out of line. Even his allies, the boyars, are terrified, knowing one wrong word could land them in his workshop. The economy of suffering, oil for stakes, copper for cauldrons, salt for goats, becomes Wallachia's heartbeat. But the madness is unsustainable. Vlad's resources are thinning, his allies dwindling. The Ottomans haven't forgotten him, they're regrouping, and Radu is among them, a reminder of everything Vlad can't escape. Reports reach Târgoviște of Radu's beauty, his charm, his success, and each one is a dagger. Vlad begins planning a new campaign, one that's less about territory and more about proving he's beyond pity, beyond vulnerability. He dreams of facing Radu on the battlefield, of seeing his brother's eyes and forcing them to reflect something other than pity. The forest of stakes begins to fall, wood rotting, bodies returning to earth. But its shadow lingers, a testament to Vlad's transformation. He's no longer just the voivode, he's Kazikli Voivoda, the Impaler, a name whispered in fear from Constantinople to Hungary. Yet the victory is empty. The boy in the palace is still there, bleeding, unavenged. Vlad's reign is a paradox. Absolute control, absolute torment. He's won battles, but not the war against his own past. We're at the edge of the end, my friends. Next time, we'll face Vlad's final days, his death, and the legend that outlives him. It's a story of trauma that doesn't heal, of a man who became the stake, and of a legacy that haunts us still. Subscribe, hit the bell, and let's finish this grim tale together in part 10. Hey Grim Chronicles crew, we've reached the end, part 10 of our journey through the blood-stained life of Vlad the Impaler. We've walked through his stakes, his cauldrons, his golden goblet, and the forest that stopped an empire. Today, we're facing his final days, his death, and the legend that turned a broken boy into Dracula, a name that echoes through centuries. This is a story about trauma that doesn't vanish but transforms, spreading like a plague from one violated soul to the world. Let's stand on Târgoviște's walls one last time and see how Vlad's story ends, and why it never really does. It's 1476, and Vlad's third reign is crumbling. Wallachia is a land of ghosts, its people hollowed out by years of terror. The forest of stakes is gone, its wood rotted, its body's dust, but its shadow clings to every street, every whisper. Vlad, now in his mid-40s, is a man stretched thin, his resources depleted, his allies scarce, his enemies closing in. The Ottomans, led in part by his brother Radu, are circling, and rival nobles smell weakness. Yet Vlad's mind is still in the palace, still hearing footsteps, still designing punishments to silence them. His reign has been a 20-year war against his past, but the past is winning. The end comes quickly, almost anticlimactically. The accounts vary. Some say Ottoman forces ambushed him, others point to rival boyars, but the details matter less than the truth. Vlad is caught, beheaded, his head sent to Constantinople as a trophy. In his final moments, he's reduced to what he always feared: powerlessness. No stakes, no cauldrons, no goblets can save him. His body, once the instrument of his will, is violated one last time. It's a brutal irony. A man who spent his life penetrating others is penetrated by history's blade. His head displayed as proof that even monsters fall. But here's the twist. Vlad wins. Not the battles. Wallachia falls to the Ottomans, his tormentors mostly die natural deaths, but the transformation. He becomes Dracula, the Impaler, a legend that outlives empires. Historians estimate he killed between 40,000 and 100,000 people, each death an attempt to rewrite his story, to place himself in power rather than powerlessness. Each scream was his own, each stake a mirror of his pain. Yet the memories never faded. Modern psychology calls this trauma reenactment, where victims recreate their abuse with reversed roles, seeking control over what once controlled them. Vlad didn't just reenact. He industrialized it, turning his trauma into a system of stakes, cauldrons, and psychological warfare. The stakes weren't random. They were autobiographical, each one recreating a specific sensation from the palace: dull tips, oiled surfaces, precise angles. The cauldrons mirrored the baths, the goblet his need for inviolability, the goats the games that blurred pleasure and pain. Every method was a chapter from his 6 years as a hostage, a story of a boy who learned that power meant penetration, that survival meant becoming worse than his tormentors. His death in 1476 didn't end the story. It cemented it. Vlad became the stake, not just using it but embodying it, an instrument of violation that pierced history itself. Today we know him as Dracula, a monster, a symbol of medieval cruelty. But we rarely see the 11-year-old boy trembling in a marble corridor, learning his body wasn't his own. We count his victims, 40,000, maybe 100,000, without counting the first, Vlad himself, destroyed by hands that never considered what they'd create. He spent 40 years trying to escape that corridor, to silence the footsteps, to pin his past in place with every stake he raised. But trauma, like blood, always finds a way to flow. It stained Wallachia, Europe, and the stories we tell today, ensuring Vlad's name lives on, not as the boy he was, but as the monster he became. This is the heart of Vlad's story. Monsters aren't born, they're made. The Ottomans forged a weapon in that palace, and Vlad turned it against them, against everyone, against himself. His legacy is a warning. Trauma doesn't disappear, it transforms, finding new shapes, new victims, new ways to perpetuate the cycle. The forest of stakes is gone, but its shadow remains, reminding us that the worst horrors come from hands that don't see what they're shaping. Somewhere, in some corridor, a child is still waiting, and the question is whether we'll find the courage to say, enough. That's it for our series on Vlad the Impaler. Grim Chronicles fans, thank you for walking this grim path with us, for facing the blood and the pain. What did you think of Vlad's story? Was he a monster, a victim, or something in between? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we want to hear them. Let's keep telling the stories that history tries to forget, because only by facing them can we break the cycle. Until next time, stay curious and stay brave.